Hi, my name is Kendra Sommerfeld, and the topic I'm going to discuss is about how to determine the success of a wetland restoration. I'm interested and passionate about this issue because I'm majoring in environmental sciences, policy, and management, and I plan on pursuing a graduate degree in ecological restoration, preferably focused on wetlands. During this presentation, I will give an overview of wetland restoration, what determines success of a restoration, challenges with this, past and current opinions on how to measure success, and recommendations for future research and solutions. Why we should care about wetland restoration is because restoring wetlands is becoming more of a prominent issue. We have experienced great wetland loss from agricultural and urban development. We should care about wetland losses and restoring them because wetlands provide and support many economic benefits to society, such as the fishing industry, birds, biodiversity, erosion and pollution control, and flood control. These charts on this slide show the wetland losses we have experienced. Before settlement, there were around 220 million acres of wetlands. About half were drained for agricultural reasons. Why we should care about measuring if a wetland restoration was successful is because if we can measure the success of wetland restoration in a more efficient way, it will bring us one step closer to bringing these habitats back at a faster rate. What are wetlands? Wetlands are ecosystems that can be wet all year long during different seasons or even during different times of the day. They have very unique soil profiles, hydrological activity, and wildlife. Restoration means returning a degraded wetland system to its previously undisturbed state. There are two different types of approaches to restoration. Passive approach is when the issues causing wetland degradation are removed and then it's left alone to naturally restore itself. The benefits include low cost, low labor, and a high certainty that the wetland will be viable and functional to its surrounding landscapes. Active approach involves physical alterations of the landscape to restore, create, and enhance the wetland function and structure. This is used when a wetland is severely degraded. Active methods include changing the topography, the water flow, intensive planting and seeding, intensive species control, which could mean removing invasive species, and bringing soils to the site. This can be very costly and labor intensive. There are a few ways to help us supplement and base restoration goals on. These are the most common ways used in wetland restoration. The first way is by historic measurements. If hydrology, soil, and vegetation data on the pre-disturbed wetland is complete enough, you'll be able to compare before and after states. Aerial photos and historical maps can be used as well, and data from sources such as local water districts, universities, and citizens may also provide extra information as well. But because historical information is often missing, most projects depend on local reference sites. These sites should occur in the same life zone close to the restoration project and should be exposed to similar natural disturbances. More than one reference site should also be used. Reference sites should be used for supportive information for the restored wetland, not as a specific goal. Some scientists believe that the reference method has issues. Looking at a reference wetland doesn't tell the degree of recovery or the rate of recovery. Another problem is that wetland restoration typically starts a wetland from an early ecosystem stage, and reference wetlands are usually mature and have had years to develop. A third problem with undisturbed reference wetlands as a goal is that there is a lot of variation in wetlands, and your reference site might actually be very different from the restored wetland. The big question we are trying to answer is, how do we know when we have reached success? Determining this of a wetland restoration has been and continues to be a very challenging problem. One way to measure is called functional success. This way determines success by evaluating whether the ecological functions of the wetland have been restored, and it also measures if it's sustainable. Compliance success is measuring the success by how well a contract or permit was followed. If the goal was to increase a certain plant species, then success is measured by that plant and if it has recovered. Landscape success measures how the wetland interacts to the surrounding ecosystems. It also measures how much the wetland contributed to its surrounding landscapes. Vegetation has been the most measured, less on soil, wildlife, and hydrologic features. Vegetation is a very common method because it easily reflects other aspects of the restoration. Another way, which is a pretty intensive way to measure, is a primer by the SER, which is the Society of Ecological Restoration. They produced a list of 9 attributes for measuring restoration success. One was diversity in community structure in comparison with reference site. 2, presence of indigenous species. 3, presence of functional groups necessary for long-term stability. 4, capacity of the physical environment to sustain reproducing populations. 5, normal functioning. 6, integration with the landscape. 7, elimination of potential threats. 8, resilience to disturbances. And 9, sustainability. Measuring all these attributes would provide a great outlook of the restoration, but it would take a lot of money and resources, and most monitoring phases don't last longer than 5 years. So many restoration projects don't use this method. So there's challenges of determining success of a wetland because there are many different methods of doing so. There is many different things to measure. No wetland is the same. There is different ways of restoring a wetland, and there's also many different reasons why we are restoring a wetland. There is need to learn how to handle and recognize uncertainty. Projects are usually very young and take a lot of time to fully understand the process. Our knowledge is still evolving, and current research and science lack in restoration. Also, we can never fully restore something to pristine, untouched condition because of changes to land uses, bodies of water, and other aspects of surrounding landscapes in the last hundreds of years usually make it impossible. There isn't any opposing views to this topic. Almost all scientists agree we need to learn how to measure the success of a wetland effectively and more efficiently. The biggest constraint to measuring success of a restoration is current research and science because it is lacking in the ecological restoration field. More projects should be managed by ecological restoration professionals, and we should start measuring more soils, animal life, and hydrological functions, not just vegetation. There is also difficulty in reaching agreement on and understanding of the goals of the project. Goals should be clearly defined when starting a wetland restoration. They should be realistic and compatible with future predictions of the site. They should also be achievable with the knowledge available to us and scientifically appropriate. Natural ecosystems are very complex, and even if you start out with detailed information about a site, the way it responds to changes can be unpredictable. Unexpected events may occur and new information may become available. So we should use this technique called adaptive management, and this technique involves including new information into all stages of the project. Using adaptive management means you always evaluate your project in the light of new information. This project can be thought of as a feedback loop in which information about what is happening with your project currently helps you determine how best to go forward with the next steps. Adaptive management is a repeated process that should be applied through the lifetime of the project. And this approach also avoids the yes-no evaluation of whether you have reached success or not.